Having surpassed 1,000 completed anime, it's time to review my old favorites and find out what holds up. I'm Sacrabolic, your envoy of hope, and this is Anime Favorite Search. Nisemonogatari is about Araragi mostly dealing with two oddity events surrounding his sisters Karin and Tsukihi, as well as encountering the sort of co-workers, I guess you could call them, of Oshino Meimei after he ends up leaving the city in the previous arc. It is a sort of two arcs that end up diving into the concepts of good, evil, truth, forgeries, lies, justice, and in a way, family as well. And it starts with the Karin B is an arc that I did not remember being this damn good. Going in chronological order, this might be the best arc so far, and going in broadcast order, this is the best arc so far. It is about specifically Araragi's younger sister, Karin Araragi and Tsukihi Araragi, but the B arc specifically focuses on Karin. And Araragi's younger sisters are known as the Fire Sisters, and they go around essentially helping people and acting as heroes of justice for the town to basically take out, like, criminals or ne'er-do-wells or what have you. So, turns out that a person who was spreading the rumors about the curses in the Nadeko Snake arc is actually still in town, and this person is a con artist known as Deshu Kaiki, who also happened to be the very first con artist that attempted to help Senjo Gahara when she was still dealing with her crab issue. So this guy's in town, Karin confronts him alone, and he ends up afflicting her with an oddity known as the Fire Wraith Bee. Two of those words might have gotten mixed up, but it doesn't really matter. Point is, it's like an illness that will kill her in a couple of days if Araragi doesn't find a way to get through it. And this arc is so fucking dense that honestly, if I were to talk about everything that happened in it, this video would be way too fucking long. So we're going to have to do some real truncation here. So big things that go on with this is the arc with the famous Courage to Tell a Lie scene, which also leads into a really funny moment in that scene where Araragi does a handstand and then later sees Karin doing a handstand and then says that no one should be doing a handstand. It's something like no self-respecting person should be doing a handstand past middle school. And it's like a funny little thing there. It also foreshadows a lot of the later developments going on with Mayoi. And more than that, we get Shinobu fully coming out of her stupor, creating the relationship that she has with Araragi going forward. We learn that she's learned a lot about oddities from Oshino, and so she is the one that helps with the Fire Wraith Bee, or the Wraith Fire Bee, during this arc. We also find out that Tsubasa Hanakawa might be bullying Senjo Gahara by threatening to ask Araragi out on a date, which is actually kind of hilarious, because this would not work, and we know this would not work, and it is made abundantly clear that this does not work. But, needless to say, Hanakawa is at least keeping Senjo Gahara sort of in check, even though she does end up kidnapping Araragi during this arc, which was previously alluded to during the Koyomi Water arc. And so that all ties back around, and there's just like so much calorie-rich foreshadowing for arcs that have happened, arcs that haven't happened. We get the fight between Karin and Koyomi where they like fucking level an intersection. It's absolutely fucking fantastic. And the best part about that arc, I would have to say, that was like really getting me on board with it, not that any of it was bad, was that Koyomi basically defeats his own self-sacrificing mindset that he had going throughout the start of the series. During the Kizumonogatari, during Bakemonogatari, he basically is disputing his own sort of methods and thought process that he's had throughout the course of the story so far. Using his sisters as a reflection of him, he manages to refute himself. Although, does he commit fully to this? Probably fucking not. He's Araragi. He's like the biggest damn hero ever. But we do get the confrontation between Senjogahara, between Araragi, and between Kaiki, who Kaiki is a weird character that I think we're going to have to talk more about during the Medusa arc, because Kaiki is a con man who is related to the main oddity specialists throughout the course of the series, and he knows about oddities, and he knows how to fake oddities, but he claims that he doesn't believe in oddities, but he also uses oddities, even though the Fire Wraith Bee he doesn't necessarily use in this one, but he does know how to address and deal with oddities, so he's sort of a fake specialist. He is the weirdest fucking character, and I'm not 100% confident that it makes sense if you take what he says at face value, but I think the main point about Kaiki is you can't fucking take what he says at face value, and I think he's just a huge fucking liar, and he's bullshitting people all the time, and the second you accept the fact that Kaiki is lying, which we know he does canonically all the fucking time, in almost every sentence, he makes a million times more sense. This arc also brings up the concept of a fake possibly having more value than the real thing, as Araragi does not believe his sisters are real heroes, they're just playing at it, but they're playing at it in such a way that they might have greater value than actual heroes. And further to that point, this is actually a concept that comes out more towards the next arc in Tsukihi Phoenix. I guess that's not the next arc. What's the next arc? Koyomi something? Anyway, closer to Tsukihi Phoenix, which I think we're going to really have to talk about this concept there, because that is one of the biggest pieces of Monogatari that has stuck with me throughout the years. But regardless, I was shocked at how much they do in this arc, how much good stuff was in here, how much foreshadowing, how much character development. This arc was fucking wild, and it's the best so far. Tsukihi Phoenix involves two new oddity hunters coming to town in Yozuru Kaganui, which is a sort of mature woman with honestly some of the best hair in the whole show, who pretty much never walks on the ground unless she's in a fight scene, and a sort of undead Shikigami doll named Yotsugi Oninoki, with a very strange speech pattern, who specialize in hunting immortal oddities and come to town to specifically seek Araragi's younger sister, Tsukihi Araragi, who, as it turns out, is actually a supernatural cuckoo phoenix bird that impregnated itself into Araragi's mom, and therefore uses that as part of her death and rebirth life cycle. This is the arc where the sort of famous, iconic scene of Araragi brushing his sister Karin's teeth comes from, which is probably one of the most famous scenes in the entire show. And this goes to show, it expands on from the Karin B arc, the sort of relationship that Araragi has with his sisters in his attachment to him. He claims he hates them. No one fucking buys that. They don't fucking buy that. And so Araragi takes issue with the immortal hunters trying to take out his sister, and so he comes into conflict with oddity hunters in a way that he really hasn't done with any of the others outside of maybe Kaiki, who in the Kaiki Wind arc, we see Araragi, Shinobu, and him in a donut shop eating donuts. And so it turns out, and I was like, I don't remember when that occurs. Apparently it occurs during this arc, and I totally forgot about that. I would almost say that the Koyomi Wind arc might actually work better to watch after watching Tsukihi Phoenix, at least up to episode 10, when you get the scene with Kaiki, because it shows him taking the last bit of Araragi's money, and so it almost adds to the punchline that was in that scene if you watch that second. But regardless of that scenario, we have to acknowledge that Kaiki is getting a double payday, because he sells Araragi the information about the immortal hunters, and then the immortal hunters say that they were the one that gave him the tip. We don't know if he got paid for that or if he just did it out of pettiness, but he probably got paid for that. So this man is collecting fucking dividends from both sides of the aisle in this conflict because of fucking course he is. This arc also addresses sort of the concept that was alluded to in the Karin B arc about the idea of good versus evil versus justice, where in this arc, Tsukiki specifically talks about her idea of being justice basically being influenced by the people around her in Karin and Araragi, and how she is herself sort of a fake, which will tie back into something we'll have to talk about in a second. But more to that point, in this arc, there is an argument to be made that Yozuru Kaganui, the oddity specialist in this case, is actually almost the morally correct one, in that the Phoenix itself essentially placed itself into Araragi's mother's womb, and she was forced to sort of like carry a monster that was biologically not her child against her will, specifically to perpetuate the life cycle of the Phoenix itself. Now, her ignorance of this doesn't really dissuade the fact that in a almost exaggerative way, but maybe not that exaggerative, this was very almost rapey in a regard. And so when you look at how you could like view the ideas of like consent and ignorance and deception going through, there is a very clean argument that Kaganui is correct and the immortal Phoenix that is Araragi Tsukihi is actually a problematic entity that should be disposed of. And in this regard, Araragi, through his own admission, is sort of siding with evil in this, which in a way sort of calls back to the Karin B arc, where Araragi, and later agreed upon by Kayaki Deshu, agrees that the most important thing for a hero is strength and not being correct. And in this regard, we have an arc where Araragi is, in an argumentative way, incorrect, although he would say that he's willing to bear that cross out of love for his sister, and he was also not strong enough to beat Kaganui. However, that ties in with the secondary theme of this arc, and also the total argument that is Nisemonogatari in the first place, which is what is the value of truth or lies in this specific case, which this brings one of the greatest philosophical debates I've seen in an anime ever actually come up, which is an argument and a reveal that Kayaki Deshu both knew Oshino Meimei and knew Yozuru Kaganui, and he was absolutely bullshitting in the previous arc about not knowing anything about supernatural creatures because he was like because he was in the occult research club with him. Nothing that man says is fucking trustworthy. And so to reconcile with the fact that he apparently doesn't believe in supernatural creatures, you really have to take in the fact that the man does not stop lying at any point. Regardless, the philosophical debate brought up in this is specifically if there was something that a forgery that was created at such quality that it is indistinguishable from the original, what has more value? The original or the forgery, or do they have the same value? And in this, the specialist in question, Yozuru Kaganui, states that the original has more value, whereas Oshino Meimei says if it's indistinguishable, then both have equal value, which goes a lot with his sort of philosophy about being a mediator and trying to keep things balanced, where we have Kayaki Deshu claiming that the forgery, in its attempt to be as accurate to the original as possible, ends up having greater value. And in this regard, and in this arc, we see Araragi siding once again with the thought process of Kayaki Deshu, showing that Araragi, in sort of ways across all of the specialists in the series, probably has more in common with Kayaki than he does with any of the other oddity specialists that we encounter. And almost in a way, Kayaki is a sort of reflection, a dark reflection of what Araragi could potentially have become were his path not set in a different manner. We also get to see Araragi powering his way all the way up by having so much blood drained out of him that Shinobu goes back to her fucking teen form, which is still not enough to power through Kaganui. So in this, we have a very interesting, both like physical and philosophical debate going on between the forces of Kaganui and Araragi. And I'm not going to say this is my favorite arc, but I do think this is, at least for me, my favorite philosophical discussion that is brought up in Monogatari, And honestly, for the fact that this was essentially 4 episodes and I've been talking for almost 9 minutes, I really think that goes to show the sheer fucking quality of this arc and honestly of Nisemonogatari as a whole. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic, your envoy of hope. Bye-bye.